Uh, Hello, Rasa community. Welcome to live coding today. I'm just gonna wait a little bit to make sure everything's going good in terms of transmission. Today, we're gonna be working on tests and validation. Actually, I think I just said testing in the, great, it is streaming, fantastic. I think I just said testing in the video title, sure did, but we're gonna do both. And this is in preparation for starting our deployment cycle, which we talked about a lot last week, and we sort of figured out that our options that we're going to do is first we're just going to use Rasa X to share our assistant, maybe running it on Heroku for the server version. Haven't quite decided the cloud platform, something we'll do in the future, but in the meantime, actually, one sec. I'll make sure. Yeah, not next week though, because next week I'm going to be out on Friday because it is a holiday. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to host Rasa X Server Edition so that we have like a public-facing thing where folks can talk to the assistant and we can learn more about it and how it works in practice. And then the second thing we're going to do is a Twitter conversation, because once we have that will also create a, stable URL that we can use as an endpoint for our Twitter assistant to hit. We're gonna have to deal with the authentication. Anyway, we'll handle that bridge when we come to it. Cross, not handle. Handle that problem when it arises. Sufficient unto the day. And then the third thing is we're gonna try and figure out how to host it on a very simple website, and then the fourth thing that we're going to do is start digging into Jekyll a little bit, because that's what the website I want to host it on is written in. And I would say that it is not a framework I'm familiar with. Let's put it that way. So that's going to be in the future. But before we let, folks start to use our assistant, and before we start to, make additional changes and start updating our model, we want to make sure that we know that it works. So if we look in our directory here, you may notice that what I don't have is tests. So we're going to start by testing. Randy said, did you say that I'm running that on Roku? No, Heroku. This one. It's, also, I know that word looks Japanese. It is not. It is just a made-up word. I was curious and looked it up one day. Or maybe DigitalOcean. I don't know. I haven't decided a cloud platform yet. I just want to do one that we don't have a video tutorial for already, because that's efficient, So that's the future plan. Today we're going to be doing testing. And when we say testing in Rasa, there's a couple things that we actually mean. So Karen has this fantastic blog post. I'd recommend it if you haven't read it already. I mean, we'll be going over it today, so don't necessarily go and read it right now, about making automated testing part of your Rasa workflow. And today, I think we're going to be focusing more on Rasa specific tests and not as much looking at, unit tests for our custom actions, because what those are going to look like is going to depend on your custom actions, and the Rasa tests will be consistent across Rasa assistants. Randy says much different. Yeah. I bet you could run an assistant on Roku. Probably would have to have some sort of voice handling. I don't know if they have voice handling built in or not. It's not something I've looked into a lot. Types of tests, unit integration, functional tests. So the first thing that we should probably do, actually we probably should have done this before we were training, was data validation. So in your Rasa assistant, right, you are providing examples, right, of different ways to say things, and you're also providing rules potentially for always doing something the same way, and you're also providing stories, which are different ways that conversations might go. And you want to make sure that when you are providing this data, that it is consistent with itself, and that you don't have conflicting rules. I'm not sure whether data validate tests rules right now or not. And you want to make sure that you don't have problems in your training data that means that your model won't be as effective as it could be. So that's the first thing we'll do. All right, so first we're in the right directory. You can see if I list all my files, yep, this is the Rasa one. I've got my config, I've got my domain. So I'm gonna run Rasa data validate. And I believe we can do stories and NLU separately. Yeah. So let's start with stories. And I don't believe I set a max history manually, so I'm just going to leave that. Bueno Polly says, I want to set up a company that develops chatbots with Rasa. Can I do that for free, or should I pay Rasa for that? I mean, we're an open source framework, so as long as you're abiding by, our open source, A, I'm not a lawyer. B, as long as you're abiding by our open source license, you should be okay. What I would not do is use our branding stuff, because you'd have to talk to us. Basically, you don't want to represent yourself as being Rasa, if that makes sense. Also talk to a lawyer is my number one piece of advice there. But that is my my answer that might be wrong if a lawyer says it is. I could have started the data validation before we had that convo. Oh, I got some errors. All right, let's get in here and clean up this data. What did I do? Okay, utterFAQ is listed as a response action in the domain file, but there is no matching response defined. Please check your domain. The version key is missing in the training data file. Oh yeah, I should do that. So I have at least one of these that doesn't have this at the top. Is it use stories? There is. All right. Let's do that. And I don't have anything here. And in fact, I think I'm just going to get rid of that entirely, because I'm not actually doing any NLG, natural language generation. I'm just using templates. All right, so that's that one. The utterFAQ is listed as a response action. So let's go to our domain file and double check that. Okay, so it would be a response. So I can just get rid of it as an action? Potentially? Actually, I'm gonna comment it out instead. Is that a comment in YAML? I don't think that's a comment in YAML. I think that's a header. No, that's a comment. Yeah. Nope. Yeah, that's a comment. Okay, so I'm gonna try retraining and see if we get an error there. I corrected my validation, my version key stuff. Intents, uniqueness of intents and stories look good. Validating utterances. utterFAQ, you should add a template with this key. utterFAQ is used in stories, but it is not a valid utterance action. Please make sure the action is listed in your domain. Project validation completed with errors. I am wondering, I seem to remember seeing a discussion of this on the forums where retrieval responses in particular were being marked as errors even though they weren't. And also it is possible that I should update my Rasa version and that would fix that error. Rasa's nice earrings, thank you. They're supposed to look like little comet tails. I don't know how much they do, but that's the idea. So, I'm gonna see if I can find that forum post real quick, because I would love to see that discussion and bring it up here, and I think that it's relevant. Forum. That's the one. And the forum is at this URL. This one, that URL. The pointing in the right direction thing is quite difficult. Okay. Let's see if I can find the discussion. Name. Is it this one? Oof. Nope, not that one. That question is a little bit hard to answer with the way that it's presented. Contradict each other when they shouldn't, inconsistent. And as you can see, these are all on the last day, so I don't see it. I remember it being in the last day as well, and I'm just not seeing it here. And I also don't know where it would be. Anyway, if someone has the link, feel free to pop it in the chat and I'll take a look. But I'm gonna try a training and see if I get an error, because I think I will. I think I have actually got my response selector set up correctly, and then I'm gonna get errors in my Rasa core here. I could be wrong about that. Coffee. Hopefully y'all are having a good spring / fall, depending on where you are in the hemisphere situation. We just turned to spring here in the northern hemisphere, so y'all down there would have just gotten to fall. All right, no errors. I guess we don't need it. Peace out. And the reason that we have FAQs is because we have some retrieval intents. So here, I've gotten examples of people asking about Rasa, and if I detect that they're asking about Rasa, I will respond like this. And the reason that you would treat FAQs, or FAQ stands for frequently asked questions, or chit chat, or things like that differently, are because if you have a flow of a conversation and someone's like, oh, by the way, what's Rasa? That's sort of set aside from the rest of the flow of the conversation, and then you'll hop back in after that single turn thing is done. And the way that the Rasa architecture is set up, we sort of detect, okay, this is an FAQ thing, and then we figure out which of the FAQs it is. So there's a second sort of intent detection process that goes on there, and it reduces your overall number of intents at the first pass the conversation, and B, it lets us handle those sort of like aside turns a little bit more robustly. So that's why it's set up that way. Hi, Amina. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so I think that I'm gonna try doing data validation once again. I think that we've corrected most of the errors. I think we have one left. Did I not save the stories? Sure didn't. I was like, we definitely corrected that error about not having the version key at the top of one of our data files. And we just hadn't saved it. Looks good, looks good. And then the action FAQ is used in some stories. So let's double check our stories. Uninformed type. Very well. Is it? Oh, you know what? I bet it's in a rule. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this rule is set up correctly. I mean, it works as intended, so I'm pretty sure it is correct. So I'm just gonna let that be for now. And if we run into errors later, we can handle that. And I think that might be fixed if I updated Rasa versions. Okay, so we validated our NLU. We validated our stories. We definitely just validated both NLU and stories. Yeah. Okay. So we're good there. But errors in your training data files, which we have handled. So another thing that we can do is we can actually do validation. So when we are training our assistant to recognize things, right, based on things that it's seen previously, if you then test it on things that it's already seen, it's more likely to get those right because it has seen that exact example and knows what the answer is, right? It's like cheating on a test. So if we want to know how robust our assistant is to seeing new things that it hasn't seen before, then instead of training with all the data that we have, we'd hold some of our data out and see how it does on that data. So sometimes you'll talk about, hear about this as a test train split. Sometimes people will do a three-way split, test train validation, particularly for something where you might end up doing like multiple comparisons. Because if your model when it's training will get better on the test set. And then if you're sort of comparing models based on the training set and maybe like, adjusting that model based on the training set, then the data, the model has already seen in some sort of like filtered capacity the training data. So then the very final pass you do on the completely held out validation data is sort of that double split thing. So let's do a split. And we may have to end up adding a little bit more data for this to make sense because we don't have an enormous number of examples in our NLU data. We got a fair number. Yeah, because we combined a lot of our, I'm gonna add some more. Because we combined a lot of our intents earlier, and that should be that should help us here. I'm just adding a couple more examples. I think this one should be fine because these all have like Kaggle in them, so those should be pretty stable across splits. Great. Okay, so I think we're good there. And I think at this point we have enough data that we should be able to do an NLU split. So Rasa data split NLU. All right, excellent. And now we can, you can see that we've actually created a new file here, train test split. And if we pop into that, you can see that I now have fewer examples in my training data, and some of my examples have been held out for my testing data. So the reason that you want to do this sort of validation with a machine learning model is because you want to basically know whether you're overfitting. And overfitting is a thing where a machine learning model gets really, really good at the data that it's seen previously, but can't handle new but sort of similar data, right? So are we hiring? We absolutely are hiring. Careers. We're actually hiring for my team. If any of y'all speak Mandarin, we're looking for a Mandarin speaker. But yes, we've got a lot of open positions. No, I don't want the branding stuff. I just want to see the jobs. Yeah, we got a lot of open positions right now. So we got some marketing, developer relations, which is my team. Got some product positions. Yep, various stuff, sales, engineering. Yeah. So it's rasa.com/careers. And then if you want to go all the way to the bottom, it's #jobs. So overfitting is the biggest, I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but it's a very common problem in any sort of machine learning application. And you can sort of imagine it like, I don't know if you've ever been around like a young child, but when they're first learning words, they'll sort of apply them in weird ways, right? Like any animal with 4 legs is a dog, right? Or cup only refers to their particular red cup with strawberries on it. And if you give them any other cup, that's wrong. That's not a cup. It doesn't matter if you say it's a cup. So that's sort of like every animal with 4 legs would be underfitting. So like the model is applying a label too broadly. Only one specific cup, counting this cup, would be overfitting. The model is being applied too narrowly. And to make sure that your model is not doing that, you have to apply it to new data it hasn't seen before. I'm just going back to the thing here. And I think, pop this up. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Nope. Am I in the right directory? I am in the right directory. Fantastic. So now we're going to test the NLU model with this held out data. And I can, so this is going to train a new version of the model and then test it. And I can keep all my training data for my actual assistant, but this is making sure that like this pipeline and the way I've set things up works well for new related data. This hacker, great stuff. I'm also learning. Yeah, aren't we all? Hopefully. Hopefully. I never want to be like, I know everything I need to know. I'm done. I never want to learn anything else. I feel like that would be a sad time for me. Amina says, I have a question about forms. So based on the docs, I understand that we can build forms in two ways, in stories or in rules. How can I decide what to pick and focus on? Thanks. Yeah, you kind of need both. So there are two ways that you can build forms, but the two ways that you can build forms are using stories and rules, or creating a custom action using the Rasa SDK. And I mean, you don't have to use the Python SDK, you can create them however you want, but using a custom action to create the rules, to create the form. And the sort of general way that it works, we had a form in this assistant, but I got rid of it because we weren't really using it, is that you write a rule that, describes what happens when when the form runs, what sort of information you need, stuff like that. And then in the stories, you're like, here's where you want to trigger the form. Here's where it's going to happen. And then here's, what to do after the form is completed. So that's the general idea there. And you would want to do, a custom action for your form if, particularly if you wanted to do a lot of extra validation, like you wanted to, make sure that the thing that the person was looking up is a real thing. And if it's not, you can be like, oh, did you actually mean this other thing that's kind of close? Yeah. So there are two ways to do forms, and those are the two. I hope that helps. And there's somewhere in this series, there's a video about doing forms with this assistant in an earlier situation. All right. All right, so this is the, here we're specifying what the train test split is and what we're testing with. We may need to train a new model also. Yeah, and if you're, actually I'm gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna train a model because I believe that this was tested on our most recent model, which was trained on all the data, which means that it's called leakage, where you've seen the thing that you're testing on during training. So first I'm gonna train a new model, and then I'm gonna test against that model. Rasa train NLU. And I can never remember all this stuff. So that H flag there was just to ask for more information about Rasa train NLU, H52, this data NLU. I want to specify the training data. There we go. So it will be /-u, and then I specify what training data I need, and that's gonna be, nope, it's gonna be, okay, so now we're training a new model that's only seeing the split. For some reason, I vaguely remembered it being part of the test NLU, but I don't think it is. Valley says, what is Rasa? That's a great question. So Rasa is a company. I work for them. And we build an open source framework for building conversational AI / chatbots. And that's what we're doing today. We're working on building a chatbot using Rasa. And specifically, the tool that we're using here is called Rasa Open Source. And then once we're ready to deploy our assistant and have people talk to it, we'll look at those conversations and annotate them and use them to improve our assistant over time. And for that, we'll use a tool called Rasa X. So that's the quick answer. Hyperlinks in the description for the socials don't work. Oh no, that's no good. For sure they don't. Wow, that's some interesting. Okay, yeah, thanks for the heads up. I'll go ahead and fix that. Not right now, but at some point. Make a note. It looks like it's added some actually, it looks like a encoding error. It's got the sort of like the black diamonds with the question marks in it, and often that is when you're trying to pass in UTF-16 is 8 or etc. Weird. I wonder if there's a non-breaking space in there sometimes. The bane of my gosh darn existence. If I could, no, I wouldn't. I was gonna say if I could remove one thing from Unicode, it would be the non-breaking space. It wouldn't. I know that it's important for certain languages. I'm not going to. One of these pens has got to have ink in it. I'm not going to tell people that their language use and typography is invalid, but it is a pain when you run into it where you don't expect it. Check social links on YouTube. Thanks for heads up. Well, it's not this one that has the link in it. All right. Great, and now we want to trust our model, and I believe that is M is the flag. Although, we just looked at the help, so I can just scroll up. Domain. Ow, and you and money. Oh, nope, it is fixed model name. All right, and then the model name is this guy. Oh, I think that's a typo. Yeah, I don't think that's how you, I think it's got like underspaces or something in it. Underspaces, underscores. I don't know what underspaces are. It's not a real thing. Weird special character, yeah. I mean, it says, what's the difference between conversational AI, assistant, and chatbot? It's a great question. It's a little bit, people will use the terms interchangeably. Generally, when people say assistant, they mean something that's a little bit more broad purpose. So like a virtual assistant can handle multiple tasks generally, but sometimes people will say something is an assistant when it can do only one thing, which, again, the terms are used a little bit interchangeably. Chatbots don't have to be built using machine learning. They can be completely rule-based, or they can be built using machine learning. So sometimes people will talk about AI chatbots as the ones that are built using things like, diet and stuff. And then conversational AI is applying sort of machine learning techniques that are not rule-based to automating conversation. So task-oriented dialogue or chit-chat or other related tasks. If you're doing them with machine learning, people will call that conversational AI. So they're very sort of interchangeable. People will use them in similar situations, but that's sort of the clearest definition that I have. And if specifically, Assistant can refer to Google Assistant if Google is talking about it, which is a specific system. All right. Logging to no fonts, no errors. Blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. Validation fonts, quiet model. It is M. It was M. Oh, you know what? I think I looked at the training documentation and not the testing documentation. Oh. What am I doing wrong? Okay. Optional arguments. I'm using the flag. Maybe the order is wrong, but because I'm using the flag, the order shouldn't matter that much, but maybe it does. NLU one. I think we only have one NLU model, so that should be the right one. Yep, that's today's date. And then the data is, and then the test data. Did I train it with the train data? Did I train it with the test data? Also, if you're not on Windows, there's a nice little interactive widget that pops up in the command line. It's not supported for Windows, though, because of reasons. Test, okay. Train. Thank you. Yep, okay, cool. What was I train data. Okay, I did train with the right data. Thank goodness. All right. And then we can check out the results to see what all happened. We shouldn't have any stories because we were only testing an NLU model. So bot challenge, we did good with. Out of scope, not great. We had one that was confused with FAQ. Greet we did okay with. Ask resource, we had one that was confused with FAQ. If it's a relevant FAQ, I'm not upset about that. FAQ, pretty good. Confused with out of scope. Inform was okay. And that was all of our what are these called? Intense is what they're called. Wow. I'm more tired than I thought this morning, I guess. And then overall, we have about 76% accuracy-ish. And precision is better than recall, and yeah, support 17. I'm okay with this. So you wouldn't actually, if you got 100% accuracy on your NLU validation, that would be not necessarily cause for alarm, but I would take that as good evidence that you are overfitting. You don't actually want to have, you know, perfect or near perfect accuracy. I mean, oh, this is validation. So it would be good to have better accuracy, but if there's perfect accuracy, something's probably up, right? Something's a little bit weird because it's guessing, basically. And if you're always saying that you guess 100% correctly, then maybe your test data and your training data are extremely similar to each other. And for the amount of training data that we have, which is, to be frank, not that much, high 70s, I'm fine with. I'd like to see it in the high 80s. I could add more data, but I think that it doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time sort of coming up with imaginary data at this point before I get it in front of people. And honestly, this is good enough for beta testing. If it were much lower, or if the confusion here were between things that I was more worried about. So for example, I want bot challenge to be pretty good. And in this case, there was one type where it was confused with asking about a resource, and it was probably asking for a resource about chatbots. So I'm okay with that. This out of scope was not capturing a whole bunch, but if somebody's asking something that looks like something else, I would rather it not be identified as out of scope. So I'm okay with this. Definitely room for improvement, and the way that I would improve it would just be adding more data, which we will do with our serving of our system. So I'm okay with that, particularly because we're not training on all the data. So we've done our data validation. We have done cost validation with our train test split that we did, but what we still don't have is end-to-end tests. So far we've been doing model validation, which is checking how good we guess. But we also want to have tests that should be reliable, right? So if I have a model that is correctly identifying a particular input as a bot challenge, I want it to continue to be able to identify that as a bot challenge. And the way that we do this in Rasa is by writing conversations, basically, that are going a specific way, and you expect those conversations to continue to go a certain way, even as you change and update the assistant over time. So that's how you can tell that you're not sort of like, your assistant isn't drifting so far as you start to add new data that it's no longer able to handle the core use cases that you care the most about. So to do that, we will do an end-to-end conversation. And I believe that these should be in, okay, so this is talking about how to do them in Rasa S. Rasa S, I don't know what that would be, Rasa X, but I am just going to, because I don't really want to spin up a Rasa X instance right now, I'm just going to do it in my, whatever this is called, my, nope, I wanted it to be called tests. IDE. right in the text editor. And in here, I'm going to create a new file, and it can be sort of whatever. The tests will be run. Tests.yaml. Conversation tests.yaml. I believe that the CLI will try by default to run all of the files that are in the folder tests, but I am suddenly doubting myself because that's the type of morning I'm having, so I'm just going to quickly check in the docs. All right. Oh, wow, that's tiny, tiny, teeny, teeny. I got a little bit bigger. There we go. There you go. Writing test stories is what I'm looking for. Tests, conversation tests, yeah. Testing your training model, test stories, modified story format, blah, 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 blah. Look like stories in your training data. All right, and this is just a bunch of different conversations. By default, the command will run tests on stories from any files starting with test underscore. All right, so I absolutely have to change this file name. I'm glad I looked it up. I think this is the difference between Rasa 1 and Rasa 2. Test stories. Right. And then I am just going to copy and paste this and then modify it for an actual conversation that we want to have. Oh. All right. Okay, so here we are playing both the part of the user and the assistant. Back on, thank you. So the user turns, we actually write what the user should say. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pop up our assistant in the shell so that we can talk with it as if we were having a conversation. And if I were in Rasa X, I could just have that conversation and then save it as a test, and it would be much more straightforward, but I'm feeling too lazy to start the shell, so I start Rasa X in local mode, so I will make more work for myself for no reason. And we're using an action server here, so we want to run that as well for the conversation. Fabulous. Okay. Something to know about these end-to-end conversations. They don't run the action server. So this is a test of the Rasa server. Is it correctly doing what we expect the assistant to do? And so if you have an action in your test, what you would do is you would manually set in your story what the output of that action would be. And for us, the actions are just returning text. They're not changing anything internally, like they're not updating any slots. So I'm just gonna make sure that we are correctly predicting that they need to happen. But after that, we're not actually doing anything with the output because it doesn't matter. So I'll start with saying hi. Right. Sorry, the last model we trained, Control C. The last model we trained was an NLU model, and I actually don't care about it anymore, so I'm just going to delete it. So that we can actually have an assistant discussion with a full assistant, including having the conversation part of it and not just figuring out what you're saying part of it. Okay, so the user says hi, and the intent is greet. I believe this is the same intent name that we were using, so let's pop in here. Intents, yep, so we're using greet as the name of that intent, so that should be the same. So the assistant should say what it said here, which is utter greet. All right, so this is testing this first part of the interaction where the user learns about the things that the assistant can do. Is R or Python better? I don't think I have that example in my training data, that exact example training data. So the user is going to say, is R or Python better? And that intent should be FAQ, and then asking specifically about ask R or Python. Which for some reason I got the whole thing. At which point the assistant should do utter FAQ, ask R or Python, so it should have the correct response. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that that counts as a full. I think that that counts as a full conversation. So let's save that and stop this and then run a test. Because I'm sure that I've made a formatting error somewhere and I'd rather find out about it before I replicate it a lot. Randall says, would using Rasa Interactive give you more info for this? Can you save tests from Rasa Interactive? That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I know you can in Rasa X. Can you do it in the command line? I will look at that just as soon as I check my actual that I set up my files correctly. And I still can't see my cool plugin, but that's okay. So what happens is that it went through and it looked at our test story here. And because the file starts with test underscore, it correctly identified it as a test story. So this is just basically checking a basic FAQ based on one of them. And we can look at the results. So they should also be in a file called results if I wanted to, they should also be in this file called results, and we can see our story report, and it's looking good. No, it's not looking good. It is not picking up the R versus Python difference. Interesting. Also open source version 2.0. Oh, okay. Let me add the version tag. All right, I've done something I've done something incorrect. Found intent, FAQ, ask R versus Python and stories, which is not part of the domain. Let me check in the NLU data, what's it called? Is my slash backwards? Because that could absolutely be the problem. No, but ain't. Okay. Randall says it would at least tell you the intent and action utterances that were being invoked. Yeah. Also, I definitely remember, pull up, there we go. I definitely remember, interactive, Rasa X provides interactive, trained model, skip visualization, endpoints. I'm trying to see if I can just save this as a test. Plot the current conversation, choose similar conversation to training data, visualization. Yeah, let's give that a shot. And we still have our action server running? Yep, sure do. And again, I do remember somebody talking about having a problem with this on the forum, and I wasn't able to find it when I checked quickly. Checking the time. Oh, we're doing great. Okay. Cool. Great. All right. That's right. All right, and at this point, the assistant is listening and wants to utter greet. That is correct. I wonder if this delay thing is because it's pointing to localhost at some point. If you're using Windows 7 Plus, localhost will be slower than just like 1.217 or the whole IP address for home. Again, I'm pretty sure we don't have that in the training data. Yep, it's an FAQ. Utter FAQ, yep. All right, fantastic. In that case, I think what our problem here is that we should take this bit out and then our test should run correctly. And then action listen, which is correct. Amina says, if I want to rewatch every video you made to build this assistant, which should I look at? I tried Rasa Livecoding, but there's 86 videos. Yeah, it builds, definitely, because I do it most weeks. I believe the first video with this particular assistant, those should be ordered chronologically, was creating a new assistant in Rasa 2.0, something like that in the title. So that would have been the first one. And I do try to have the titles be informative, but sometimes different things happen during live coding than I intend it to. All right. And stop. I don't trust exporting a domain file. I don't overwrite my existing domain file. All right, so we should have this domain test. It looks mostly the same. Yeah, okay, so it's just been reordered a little bit. And then I should also have this test stories test. Yeah, okay, so it's just, it is exporting it as a story. It is not exporting it as a test story. So I'm just gonna, well, I guess I should add it to my stories, huh? I'll add it to my stories. I don't think it's gonna change anything. So I think there's actually a little overlap with an existing story. You know what? More data is usually better, so right, not really with that. Move to recycle bin. And I don't think I need the different domain file. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick with my existing domain file and do that. All right, fantastic. And I should also be able to see. So this is if it were rendered correctly, this would be a nice visualization of everything that has happened in our assistant. But now that we have fixed what our intents are called, if we run it as a test, it should actually work. Not that it didn't work before, but that our test results were extremely bad because I did bad. Hello, Danalish. Question is the Rasa web chat open source? I don't believe web chat is ours. I believe somebody else has built web chat, and I want to say that it is open source. We do not currently, we haven't currently built an in-house widget for having chat, except inside of Rasa X, and that one is not open source because Rasa X is not open source. It's free, it's just not open source. Raj Kamal says, he says, is there a way to autosave in VS Code that can be helpful? Probably. I'll say I only really code in this particular editor during live coding, so it just has never been top of my priority list to spend a lot of time fixing it so that it's better. Rajkumar says, these classes are a great way to learn Rasa. I'm a little stuck in the condition where I want to save raw input from the user into the database, but I'm not able to detect the correct intent. Please suggest. Ooh. Well, if you're having problems with intent detection for something, I would add it as an end-to-end story if you're in Rasa 2.0, so, or 2.x, 2.plus. So in your stories, rather than having the intent here, you just have the text, the thing that the person said directly. And then your data is stored in this events thing in the tracker store, and it'll, if you're running locally, it'll probably be set up a little bit differently than if you're running on a server using our Helm chart. But it's all saved in the tracker store, and it does include the raw text of what the user said. So it is there. Whether or not you need the intents is like a separate question, if that makes sense. I hope that answers. Megan says you're wearing Shazam earrings. A little 90s vibe to them, yeah. Yeah, but to go back to Ms. Hacker's question about Rasa Web Chat being open source, Web Chat, I think, might be, again, we didn't build it. Rasa open source is open source. Rasa X is free, but not open source. What were we doing? Fantastic, excellent. This is what we're looking for. So now that we've corrected the names, you can see that our test results now are 4 out of 4. We got that precision and accuracy is both very high. For this, because Rasa is machine learning. Model validation, very weird to have 100%. Tests where you know what should happen in a conversation given the input, and you always want to happen in the same way, those you do want to have 100% accuracy. If your tests are not at 100% accuracy, you've changed something that has fundamentally changed the way that conversations work in your assistant. And since your tests should be the conversations you really care about, that's a problem. So tests, 100%, that's what we're looking for. Validation, high number, probably not quite 100%. And in general, the more data that you have and the fewer intents that you have, the higher that number will be. So sort of the general idea there. DSI says, what's the difference between from trigger intent and from intent? That's a good cue. You have to trigger intent endpoint of your conversation. The trigger intent endpoint injects a user intent, possibly with intent, into your conversation. Oh, okay. So trigger intent is one that you are sending on behalf of the user, and an intent is one that is predicted by the user. So if the trigger intent is also one that the users can say, I believe the from intent will capture both the regular intent and the trigger intents. Trigger intents will only capture things, or will only trigger things when you are passing in that information. Okay. So this particular trigger intent is adding the entity ORCID to the conversation based on something else. The user is not providing that information, you are getting it. So often when people ask about like, hey, I want to like look up my users and refer to them by name, if they're already like signed in, what you would do is you would take that information from your overarching system or database or whatever, and then have a trigger intent that sets an entity or that sets the first intent. And the intent is like, it is if the user said hi and also provided the information about what their name is, and the first turn that they see from the assistant has that information in the background. Yeah, no worries. Happy to answer questions. Also, I'm extremely distractible today. I don't know if y'all noticed. Coffee. All right, so tests are good to go. And then Karen's blog post has a really nice walkthrough about what this looks like in Rasa X. It's easier in Rasa X than writing it out by hand, but again, I'm just lazy. I didn't want to start a Rasa X instance, and I don't have one up already. If I did, I would have used that one. And we didn't set any slots because we don't really have a whole bunch of slots in our conversation, but we should probably write a test conversation that does use one of those slots. So if we look at our domain to see everything that we have, so the slots that we have are the resource type and resource topic. So let's add a story for the type of conversation where we trigger our action to look up the piece of information. So the fanciest part of this assistant, and the one that we've been working on for the last little bit, is it's got database lookup. So nope, that's not what I want at all. Stop. I want to redo it. Sorry, I want a lot more information is what that flag says. So the fanciest part in this assistant is that it will run a query against a database when you provide certain pieces of information. And because that is an important thing in our assistant, I want to make sure that it is being correctly triggered. And I'm not going to be able to test whether or not it actually works basically with the action server, because the action server isn't going to be triggered by the test. The test is just run on the Rasa server. So I call this resource lookup. And then presumably the code that you have in your action server, we don't assume that it is Python code, right? You can have your action server being running any code in any language that correctly hits the endpoints of the assistant itself for the conversation to continue, which I think is probably the main reason that we've taken that route so far. And it's something we're talking about a lot, and I know that it's a little bit of a pain to handle those tests separately. Where was I going with this? I was talking about testing. So we're not actually going to test the action, but we will test that the action is being correctly triggered. In order to train via HTTP, we have to post model train API. Where should we send the training data in the request body? But what if the size of our training data is too big for the request body? I have never done this. I don't have an answer. I would ask on the forum. Let me pop up the forum. This side, the forum. Yeah, I would ask on the forum. I don't know the answer. I would look it up in the docs. I would probably look it up in the docs first and then ask on the forum. Another question, what about CI/CD testing with GitLab? The integration with Rasa X currently is only for GitHub. You can do it with GitLab. There are definitely, I know of people who are using GitLab for it, but we don't have like a nice easy plugin. You have to sort of handle your own Git stuff. Resource lookup, right. What's a good way to learn ML? Okay, so the user has said, scroll. What's a good way to learn ML? And this is a particular flow that we've tested quite a bit sort of manually, so I'm expecting that it will sort of continue to work. That ain't right. Yeah. Okay, excellent. So that is being correctly. So the slot resource topic should be set to ML here. And I happen to have nope, that's not going to be super helpful actually. So I'm going to look up in my test stories. Test. And I'm just using Control K here to pull up that little thing. Okay, so okay, so here in the test story is where we are specifying that this should be extracted as an entity, and this one should be. So ML should be extracted as the entity. Resource underscore. I'm just gonna copy and paste. There's no way I can type that correctly on the first try. Not happening. All right, and the intent there should be that they are asking for ask resource. At which point the assistant should do what it did here. This was the correct thing for it to do. And it is doing ask listen, ask resource, name. All right, so at which point the assistant should do utter ask type. So this is where we are so far in the conversation. At which point the user will specify what they are looking for. So I'm trying to remember what sort of resources I have in the database. They're not that many. I'm pretty sure there's a machine learning course. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so let's scroll up to where that actual thing has. Query resource is the action that should trigger after this. So the user is going to say something, the intent will be something, and then the action should be query resource. But what the user actually did was inform. And the thing that they said was, pretty sure it was just course, right? That sounds right. And course should also have been identified as resource type. And it's important that these slots are set in this way because this is what we're using to make our query to our database, which we're not testing, but we are testing that when the person provides the information, it's correctly sorted to where we need it to be for the query to actually run and the action to actually happen. And that's, again, I am not going to type that correctly. There's no way that I'm going to do that without errors, so I am just going to copy and paste. All right. This is right. So resource lookup, someone's going to ask about machine learning. They're asking about a resource. Because they haven't provided the type of resource that they want, we will also ask them what they're looking for, and then they'll provide that, and then we're going to query the resource. And in this case, the information that we gave back was a course on Rasa, not on machine learning. I mean, it's on a type of machine learning. And the way that we sort of built the logic into this is that we'll do fuzzy matching with whatever they put in to try and fix, you know, to try and map their response to something that's actually in the database. So they get some result back, and then we try to find the topic. We try to find both of them, and if that doesn't work, then we try to match the topic, and if that doesn't work, we try to match the type. So here, there were no courses on machine learning, so instead we got a course on Rasa, which, I mean, it's also a course on machine learning, so I don't think it's a bad answer, but, and that is that story. Fabiano says, I built my first bot. Hey, congratulations. Munika's talking to Schroiden. And Enrique says, oh, there's a nice Rasa Summit presentation related to GitLab pipeline implementation. Yeah, let me see if it's up yet. So we've been uploading our Rasa Summit talks. Mine went up yesterday. And I don't remember if the GitLab one has gone up yet, but it will. We're sort of slowly rolling them up. So I guess subscribe to our YouTube to see it. Heather's. Oh, was it Christoph Borner? I don't know that that's a Latin name. Anyway, it'll keep an eye peeled for it. Galindas Arias? All right, so keep an eye out for that. I don't know that his talk is up quite yet, but I would double check. Right, let's rerun our tests. Did I save that? I sure did. So now we have more stories, more conversations. Hopefully they will all continue to work 100% correctly. And I mean, we're cheating a little bit because we kind of did manual testing of these stories first. Oh, what'd I do? I messed up. Wrapping closed in double quotes, line 1, column 2. Line 1, column 2. I have a YAML syntax error. Incorrect training data format. Resource. That's definitely the way slots work. Actually this is wrong. This should be topic. I wrote it wrong, but I don't think that's the problem that they have with it. I'll just pop this open. User, yeah. Within the pipes for the wrapping. Yep. Inform, yep. And then the action, yeah. And this action query resource is what returns the text. So we don't need to say a separate utterance. We're not setting any slots. We're just directly returning the results of the database query using a template in our action file. No. Let's see if the period helps. Rachel, you should get a YAML linter. I know. Line 1, column 2. I guess I'll copy and paste it. Maybe it's something in that. Maybe I do have a non-breaking space somewhere. It's exactly the same. Maybe they don't want the space. You can just add random white space in YAML though, like line breaks. Pretty sure. All right, let's give it a shot. Decoder, wrong code. Blah, 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 blah. Entity extractions, blah, 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 blah. YAML. Line 42, extract story graph. Ugh, this error really propagated, huh? Warning, incorrect data training format, resource topic. Resource topic. Resource type. Okay, so it's this one. It's definitely this first one. I didn't specify it was an entity. Pretty sure that's it. Pretty sure that's the problem. And then resource type. All right, have I fixed it? Let's find out. Rachel, if you'd done this in Rasa X, you wouldn't have to fix your topic like formatting stuff. Listen, I know it. I'm aware. You know, penny wise, pound foolish. Ooh, sorry, that probably didn't sound great. So we're going to solve multilingual sentiment classification problem without using transformer models. Yes. Just asking is part of machine learning techniques, not anything related to Rasa. Yeah, you don't have to use transformers for anything. Like the benefits of transformers are that they don't care about sort of how close things are in a sequence, and that you can parallelize them to a greater extent than you can recurrent neural networks. So things like LSTMs. You don't got to use transformers for nothing. And a lot of sentiment analysis things are dictionary based. So like there's words and like these are sad words and these are angry words. And for multilingual situation in there, I would just put all the words into a single dictionary and then make sure tokenizer can handle both of the languages involved or all of the languages involved. I don't know that it's two. That's my recommendation. All right, problem fixed. And F score is 1, 2 out of 2, looking good, looking good. Fantastic, yeah. We can check our results as well if you're interested. And this is, oh, this is actually from when we were doing specifically the NLU testing. We never actually looked at the errors. Oh, this is actually fine. Yeah, I think that I would be fine with that being out of scope as well as talking about how I don't really take students. That one ain't right. That one is wrong, and it's pretty confident. So we may need to add more examples to the bot challenge. I think might be the answer there. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that one's a little bit weird one. And then this is, yeah, interesting. So some errors to look at, and my recommendation is if you're seeing a specific type of intent get a lot of errors, or something is misclassified as a particular intent a lot, add more training data to the intents that are being confused to help make them more distinct to the assistant. It's just sort of my general suggestion. Looks good, looks good, looks good. These are tests. We want them to all be correct. We are good to go. I think that our assistant is betested because if we look at our actual stories that we're using for the training data, it's not really covering that many different things, right? It's covering the bot challenge, it's covering asking for a resource, and it's covering, this sort of query resource thing and the FAQs. So I think we've gotten most of it. We can add a bot challenge one. Yeah, I think that makes sense. But I think that'll probably be the last test we need, and then I think we'll be good to go. So the user says, actually, I'm just going to keep consistent formatting throughout so that I don't make y'all deeply unhappy. Are you a person? Is this a real person? There we go. Something seems vaguely off about this. That's right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's better. I was like, something is a little bit off about the white space, and I was having a hard time figuring out what it was. There, that should be good. And then if we rerun our tests, we should... I've forgotten the keyboard shortcut that I've used many times in this stream to pull up the shell. Is it? Yeah, okay, it's Control tilde. Cool. That's nothing. That's not a command. It's Rasa test. All right, I think it might be time for me to be done live coding. Oh, wow, yeah, it's well past 10. Oh. Yes, continues to be wrong. There we go. And then Vedant says bag of words. Yep. Yep. And then talking about different multilingual ways of doing things. And if we check up story report, we are still hopefully doing pretty good. Hopefully still doing a pretty good job. Looks like. Yeah, fantastic. And this is for when we were doing our NLU model validation specifically earlier. Great, okay, I think we're good to go. We have done model validation for NLU. We have built tests that we can use going forward. We validated our data to make sure that everything was good, and we fixed some problems there. We've added version tags to like all of our files that we apparently just forgot. Yeah, so there won't be any live coding next week. There will be office hours on Wednesday, and there will be paper reading on Thursday. And I don't know what paper we're gonna do yet. Something fun. I'll be out on Friday though, so no live coding next week, but when we come back the week after that, which will be the April 9th, we will continue to move towards deployment. Maybe we'll set up a Rasa X on a server and work on that. Eureka says, you must rest. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining today, y'all. I hope this was helpful. If you do have any questions, again, please feel free to ask on the forum. I for sure don't answer questions on the weekend, so there might be a little bit of a lag there, but we do have a really excellent community with lots of folks who are very generous about sharing their time and expertise in answering questions. So that's fantastic. Y'all are great. And I will see you next Wednesday for office hours, and we'll have either Greg or Ty, both of whom are fantastic. One of them will be here, and you'll see their name, and it'll be one of them or not the other. And then we'll take your questions and answer them. That's the plan. All right, I'll see y'all then. Have a great weekend, and yeah, feel free to head to the forum if you have any other questions.